If you're feeling completely overwhelmed by all of the advice on this channel, then you'll probably want to stick around for this video. So I received a comment a couple of days ago on the community page, basically asking people, what is actually stopping you from getting healthy? And somebody wrote back saying that this is just too much. 16 things for this, 10 things for that, 8 things to make sure this doesn't happen. And she said, if you pick the top 2 things that I recommend for cholesterol, the top 2 things for blood pressure, the top 2 things for glucose, top 2 things for visceral fat, she said, you've already got 8 things to work on, which is far too much. And I read that and I just sat with it for a moment because something sort of clicked in my head, because she is completely right. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that I talk about insulin resistance and VO2 max and your resting heart rate and your kidney function and triglycerides and LDL and muscle mass and protein and steps and sleep and stress. And, I could just keep going there. And when I'm making these videos, I'm hoping that each one makes sense on its own. Each one is absolutely grounded in research. Each one is genuinely important. But what I haven't really done well enough is to step back and think about what it's like to watch all of them. Because if you're somebody who watches more than, say, one a week, what you're getting is this constant stream of things that you should be doing differently. And even if every single one of those things is true and evidence-based and important, the effect of it all landing at once is very often that you do none of it at all because you don't know where to start. And when you don't know where to start, you just don't start. None of it happens. It's a bit like my wife's nana. When you put too much food on her plate, she gets completely overwhelmed and she won't eat any of it. She's 93, by the way. She's amazing. But, I sort of get how this comes across. But the principle here is real. Too much choice, too many instructions, too many things to fix simultaneously. It paralyzes people. And look, when I read through the comments, clearly there are a lot of you that appreciate this number of videos. Lots of you actually like how I repeat things and go into a lot more detail in certain subjects. But for a lot of people, I think we need to step back a bit. And for those people, I'd rather you make one change and actually stuck to it rather than trying to make 15 changes and then giving up after 2 weeks. So that is what this video is about. And this is the advice I would give to my own family. If one of my family members came to me and said they didn't know where to start and felt very overwhelmed, this is what I would tell them. Just 4 things spread across an entire year. One thing at a time every 3 months. And I promise you, and I mean this genuinely, that these 4 things done consistently over 12 months are multiples more powerful than any supplement you could ever buy in terms of what they actually do in your body. Not just a bit more powerful, but multiples more powerful. This is what the research actually tells us. The supplement industry is literally worth billions and billions of pounds precisely because people are looking for something easy, something in a capsule that does the work for them. And I understand that completely. I understand why people reach for supplements, especially if other doctors are endorsing them. But the research is completely unambiguous. We cannot argue with it. Walking, eating well, building muscle, and having people in your life does more for your long-term health, your disease risk, your longevity, than anything you could ever order online and take with a glass of water in the morning. So if you spend money on supplements and you're not doing these 4 things, then I really would recommend watching the rest of this video. Now, this is for anybody who feels like their health is in a bit of a mess right now. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way at all. If you're watching this channel, it's because you want to do better. And that already puts you ahead of most people. So you've already made that first step. But if you're somebody who doesn't know where to start, who feels like every area of their life needs work, like their diet and their sleep and their activity levels and their stress, then this is your first step for that roadmap. And here's what I really want you to know before we go any further. The pressure on you here is incredibly low. We're talking about a whole year here. I'm asking you to make one change every 3 months. That's it. At the start, it's going to feel very manageable for most people, almost too easy. And that is entirely the point, because what tends to happen when people start making changes that feel very manageable rather than overwhelming is that they actually stick to them. And once you're a few months into this, once 2 or 3 of these things have become normal parts of your life, part of your routine, you'll start to feel quite different. Most people will have a bit more energy day to day. You'll be sleeping better. You might have a clearer head. And when you feel like that, you become more open to trying other things. Maybe you'll start watching my other videos a bit more differently. Not as a list of demands, but as options of things that you can add into your day. You might start experimenting with other different types of whole foods. You might start experimenting with a different sleep routine as well. That is the hope here, but it's not the requirement. The requirement is just these 4 things over a year. That is the bare minimum. And after a year, I'm very confident in saying that you will feel like a different person. And the other really important thing to mention here is that every single change I'm going to give you helps everything else. So this isn't just 4 separate things affecting 4 separate parts of your body in isolation. When you start walking more, as an example, we know that your blood sugar will improve, your sleep will get better, your mood will get better, your blood pressure will come down, and your kidneys, as a result, are under less stress. When you change how you eat your breakfast, your energy is more stable, your cravings reduce, and you naturally start making better choices later in the day without thinking about it. All of these changes compound over time, they overlap. One good thing makes the next good thing a bit easier. So even though we're going very slowly, like deliberately slowly, what's actually happening underneath is that every system in your body is gradually shifting in the right direction all at once. You just don't have to think about all of that. You just have to focus on the one thing in front of you. So the first thing I want you to do for the entire first 3 months is walk. That's it, just walk. And I know that sounds, almost far too simple, but just bear with me because the evidence behind it, behind consistent daily movement, is absolutely remarkable. I've mentioned it so many times, and people always underestimate just how powerful it is and what it does to your body when you do it every day rather than just occasionally. Now, the first thing I actually want you to go and do is to go out or go online and buy yourself a fitness watch. Honestly, you don't have to spend any more than 20 or 30 pounds, or what's that, $30 or $40. You really don't need anything expensive, but I think it will really, really help you here to see the numbers every single day. And really the number we're looking at here is your step count, but it will also track your sleep score in most watches and your resting heart rate as well. But just forget about those. Really, we just want to try and track our steps. Now, the target is 7,500 steps a day, not 10,000, not 20,000, just 7,500. And for most people, this is absolutely achievable. And the reason I say that is because that specific number, 7,500, is the point at which you start seeing really good reductions in cardiovascular risk and all-cause mortality, death from any cause. 10,000 steps feels like a mountain to a lot of people, but 7,500 just feels a bit more manageable, and manageable is what we're going for here. And again, this video is aimed at those of you who are doing very little at the moment. Now, if you can, try and walk after your meals, after you eat something. Even just 10 minutes after eating makes a real difference. There is solid evidence that a short walk after a meal significantly blunts the blood sugar spike that follows it, because your muscles start taking up that glucose during movement. So the sharp rise that would otherwise happen just doesn't happen. Now, over time, this one habit alone has a massive, massive impact on your metabolic health. It affects almost every system in your body. But please don't try and overcomplicate any of this. Just walk to the shops instead of driving, or park further away from the supermarket in the car park. Get off the bus, a stop early. Walk around the block after dinner. You will be really surprised how quickly all of these steps add up over the day. Your body doesn't know or even care whether your steps were deliberate exercise or just getting from A to B. Steps are steps, it's all movement, and they all count in the same way. Now, if walking actually isn't possible for you, or you've got mobility issues or joint pain that makes it really difficult, then you can get one of these sit down pedal exercises like just the pedals of a bike on a stand on the floor. You can use it in the living room while you're watching the TV. And, just 30 minutes spread across the day does the job. The principle here is identical. Keep the body moving, keep the muscles active, and you will see the benefit. This one single change done consistently over these 3 months will start improving your cardiovascular health, your blood pressure, your blood sugar, your sleep quality, your mood, and your energy levels. I promise you, most people will feel massive changes. And this will happen probably within a few days or weeks of starting. Remember, you're not just getting fitter here, you are treating multiple systems at once. Just trust the process and just walk. Do it for 3 months and let it become part of your routine. Now, once walking has become second nature, where you're not having to remind yourself to do it or even think about it, and it's just part of your day, then and only then do we add the next thing, and that is changing your breakfast. And the reason we're focusing just on breakfast, because for a lot of people, if I tell you to change what you're eating throughout the day, that is just far too much for some people. So let's just focus on your first meal. Continue eating what you normally eat for the rest of the day, but let's just focus on breakfast. Let's start the day right. And it might just happen that, again, once this becomes second nature, you start experimenting with other meals. But for now, let's just keep it simple and focus on breakfast. What I want you to do is to swap whatever you're currently eating for your first meal for something that is high in protein and high in fiber, with no added sugar and nothing processed. So that means no sugary cereal. It means no white toast or jam, and no cereal bars that say healthy on the packet, because it almost certainly isn't. What I mean is things like eggs in any form you like them, Greek yogurt with some berries and some seeds on top, or it could be smoked salmon with some avocado, even leftovers from the night before if you cooked a really healthy meal. Whatever you're having, try and have something green or some nuts and seeds. Just try and follow those rules if you can. There are lots of different options out there. And look, during these next 3 months, if you're struggling at the beginning, then maybe just do it 3 or 4 days of the week instead of every single morning. Just start really slow and build up gradually. But the non-negotiables for your breakfast that you do change are that they've got to have protein and fiber. Everything else is a bonus. And the reason this matters so much comes down to what happens to your blood sugar in the hours after you eat. So a high sugar or high refined carbohydrate breakfast, your standard cereal or your white toast or a pastry, it spikes your glucose really fast. It triggers a very large insulin response. And then when that glucose drops off, usually around mid-morning or afternoon, you get this big crash. You feel tired and foggy and irritable, and you start craving something sweet again. How many of you have had that? I'm sure a lot of you have. And that cycle repeats itself all day long. Now, a breakfast with protein and fiber completely changes that pattern. It digests more slowly, it keeps your blood sugar more stable for hours, and you arrive at lunchtime feeling hungry in a normal way rather than desperately craving the fastest, most sugary thing you can find. Most people who make this one change tell me their mid-morning cravings essentially disappear within the first couple of weeks. And what you'll often find, and this is that compounding effect again, is that when your morning feels better, you will naturally start making slightly better choices at lunch and in the evening as well, without anybody telling you to do it. Not because you're following a strict plan, but because you're not arriving at that next meal in a blood sugar crash, desperately seeking quick energy. By the end of the 6th month, because remember, we're talking about month 4 to 6 here, you want to be doing this most days if you can, and keeping it really consistent. And actually, what I'll do is I will put some links in the description below to some of the breakfasts that we eat every single day, so you can get a feel for the type of thing that really works. Okay then, so you're on to month number 7 now. You are over halfway through. And, so far you have made 2 really important changes to your health and to your lifestyle. So that is a great achievement. The third thing could be the most important one, and it's all about building muscle. Now, some people can be a bit intimidated by this, but you really shouldn't be. You can build muscle at any age, even if you are over 80, absolutely. Because the evidence for what building muscle does to your long-term health is so strong that it wouldn't be right to not include it in this video. So we're going to start resistance training here. And I'm not talking about going to the gym 5 days a week and working out for 2 hours. And we're not talking about taking creatine or protein shakes or any of that. We're just talking about 3 movements, just 3 things. We're talking about a squat, a push, and a pull. Now, the squat is just sort of standing up and then lowering yourself down, bending your knees, keeping your back straight as low as you can go, preferably until your thighs are parallel to the floor. If you can do a full bodyweight squat, then that is amazing. And you can watch lots of different videos on YouTube about how to do this properly. There are lots of videos showing you the correct technique. But if you can't do that, then just rising up from a chair and then lowering yourself back down absolutely counts, and that will be working your muscles. The squat targets your legs, these really big muscle groups. These are the largest muscle group in your body. And that matters enormously because the bigger your muscles, the more capacity your body has to absorb and store glucose from the blood, which directly improves your metabolic health and significantly reduces your risk of type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Now, the push is a press up. So it can be on your toes if you can, the normal press up, or you can be resting on your knees if that's where you are, or even just standing and then pushing your hands against a wall or the kitchen counter. And the pull is simply a resistance band that you can buy for maybe £5 or £10, looped around a door handle or even your feet where you're sat on the floor, and basically just sort of pulling the resistance band towards you. And then what that's doing is working your lats and your biceps and your shoulders as well, the backs of your shoulders. And that's it. Those are your 3 movements. And try and aim for around 15 or 20 reps of each one of them a day. And you don't have to do all of them at once. You can spread them across the day if that's easier. You can do some in the morning, some in the afternoon, some in the evening, whatever works around your routine. And again, this video is aimed at people who currently do very little. If you can do more than this, then fantastic. Now, the reason I've placed this in month 7 to 9 rather than at the beginning is quite deliberate. If you spend 6 months walking every day and eating a high protein breakfast, then you already have habits, you have routine. You already know that you can make a change and stick with it. Building muscle is so incredibly powerful and important as you get older. I've done so many videos on it. It improves your blood sugar control, your insulin sensitivity, your bone density, your balance, your cardiovascular health, and your ability to stay independent and functional as you get older. And the research on this across all age groups is absolutely overwhelming. And as you get more confident and get stronger, you can build on it. You can add more exercises. You can get some dumbbells if you want. Maybe eventually you can join a gym if you want to as well, or join some exercise classes. But none of that is required to get really meaningful results if you are currently sedentary. These 3 movements, so squats and then press ups and then pulls, if you do them consistently, maybe 3 days a week to begin with, will absolutely make massive changes to your health. And finally, we move on to month 10 to 12. This is the final quarter of the year. And this is all about social connection. Now, this one, again, often surprises people. They expect me to finish with something about sleep or cold showers or, again, supplements or something like that. And yes, sleep is really important, and I will do another full dedicated video on that very shortly. But for this roadmap, the 4th thing I want you to focus on in the final stretch of this year is your social life. And I really want to explain this one properly because according to the research, this absolutely is a really important health intervention. What I want you to do, and just bear with me on this one, what I want you to do is to make a really conscious and deliberate effort to spend more time with people throughout the week. And if you're somebody who doesn't really spend much time with anybody at all, then that could look like joining something like a church or a mosque or a synagogue or a community cafe or a local walking group, or volunteering at your local charity shop or food bank or something like that. It could mean picking up the phone to a friend or family member more often than you currently do. It could be as simple as simply arranging to go for a walk once a week with somebody, which also gets your steps in as well, so you're doubling up without even trying. Now, the evidence on social connection and longevity is absolutely massive. There is tons of research on this, and I'll link a couple of papers in the description below. It never gets anywhere near enough attention in this sort of space. We know that strong social ties are one of the single most consistent predictors of how long people live and how well they stay across their lifetime. Feeling lonely and feeling socially isolated are associated with massively increased risks of heart disease and dementia and depression and premature death. And the effect sizes in the research are comparable to smoking 15 or 20 cigarettes a day. And clearly that is not a small effect, that is massive. People with strong, regular social connections, they don't just live longer, they recover from illness faster, they have better cognitive function into older age, and they report higher quality of life across virtually every measure that we have. And there's something else that happens when you have people to see and plans to look forward to that is even harder to measure, but just as real. So you have a reason to get up in the morning. You have a reason to do the laundry, to go out and get your hair done, to put something nice on, maybe to go out and get a new shirt, because you're going out to do something. You're going out to see somebody. Your brain starts thinking about other people. It starts remembering conversations, anticipating things, making plans. You become more mentally active without even trying. You have purpose, and purpose, it turns out, is one of the most powerful and most underrated things a human being can have for their long-term health. These really big research studies put sense of purpose right at the top of the list, alongside movement and diet. So if you're getting on a bit, or you're feeling quite lonely, or you don't see many people during the week, please don't underestimate this one. It might feel like the least medical thing on this list, maybe like the least important one, but for a lot of you, it could be the most important one. So if you've reached the end of this 12 months, then you have done something absolutely amazing for your health. You are now walking every day. You've overhauled your breakfast. You're doing some form of resistance training, maybe 3 times a week or even more. And you've invested really meaningfully in your social connections. Hopefully you feel very different now, not just a bit different, but genuinely different. And now the question is, well, where do you go from here? The first thing I would say to that is, don't abandon what you've already built. Keep those 4 things as part of your routine. These 4 things are not just a stepping stone to some other program, they are the foundation to everything. Everything else in health and longevity sits on top of them. So keep doing them. They don't just stop being important just because they've become automatic, but once they are embedded into your life, you have room to start layering things on top. The next thing I'd say to look at is your sleep and your stress levels, because once your activity levels and diet are in a better place, sleep often starts to improve on its own, but there are specific things that you can do to optimize it further, and I'll make a video on that properly very shortly. After that, I'd start thinking about upgrading your other meals the same way you upgraded your breakfast. So this will obviously be your lunch and your dinner, just improving them very slowly, meal by meal, moving towards more whole foods and more veg and more protein and fiber, and obviously less ultra-processed foods. Don't do this all at once, just do it one meal at a time, the same way that you did it for your breakfast. You might also start thinking about getting your blood markers checked, so things like your HbA1c, your kidney function, your liver enzymes, your lipid profile, so you have actual numbers to look at and then track over time. But if that feels overwhelming for you, then just ignore that point for now. And if you want to start thinking about your fitness a bit more, then that's the point at which you might start thinking about more structured cardio. So things like getting your heart rate up into a higher zone a few times a week, tracking your VO2 max that most fitness watchers do, thinking about your heart rate zones and all of this sort of stuff. But none of that is essential for this 1 year. Year 1 is just these 4 things, because the truth is that most people never really consistently do the basics, and the basics done consistently are responsible for the vast majority of the health gains available to any of us. You don't need to be advanced, you just need to be consistent over time. So if you are somebody who feels very overwhelmed by all of this medical advice on this channel and other channels, then just do this for 12 months and see how you feel.